Hello there, you are watching the press preview, a first look at what is on the front pages. Time then to see what's making the headlines with the deputy political editor of the Daily Mirror, Lizzy Buchan, and the Whitehall editor of the Financial Times, Lucy Fisher. Fabulous to see both of you. So front pages then, as ever, let's start with those. Oil be back, that's the front of the Metro, which says Rishi Sunak is expanding oil and gas exploration in the North Sea to try to steal a march on Labour at the next general election. The Guardian says there's dismay among opponents to the plan that Mr Sunak intends to max out the country's fossil fuel reserves. Well, Lizzie's paper, the Daily Mirror, says Mr Sunak has caved in to his party's right wing and given the green light to energy giants to drill for more profits. While the Star berates the PM as arrogant for carrying on flying to engagements instead of taking the train like other people. The Eye claims an exclusive with a report warning MPs of the dangers of developing weapons with artificial intelligence, which it says would pose a risk to humanity. Another report leading the Telegraph says it's been now proved that COVID-19 lockdown damaged the emotional development of almost half of all children. The Express claims victory in a campaign it's been running to force high street banks to pass on interest rate rises to savers. After a week-long series of reports into alleged corruption among immigration lawyers, the Daily Mail reports that 3 firms have been closed down and the entire sector placed under investigation. And Lucy's paper, the Financial Times, reporting that consumer credit and mortgage approvals have jumped sharply in June, despite interest rates being at their highest in 15 years. Well, don't forget to scan the QR code that you can see on screen during the programme and check out the front pages of tomorrow's newspapers while you watch us. So let's head to our guests then, shall we? And speak to Lizzy Buchan and Lucy Fisher. Welcome to both of you. It's been a fascinating day, has it not? Why don't you kick off then, Lizzy, with the Metro, oil be back. The PM, the paper says, gambling the election on 100 North Sea drilling licences to the fury of eco-groups. That just about sums it up.
Yes, the Metro gets straight into the sort of politics of this. So they say that the Prime Minister is gambling the election on this decision to sort of pursue further drilling for oil and gas in the North Sea. It makes the point that Rishi Sunak is trying to sort of outflank Labour on this. So one of the key things that both Labour and the Conservatives have been looking at is sort of how to differentiate themselves from each other as we head into the election, how to kind of find dividing lines to show voters, that they stand for something different. And the environment is clearly something that both the Conservatives see that they think that they can attack Labour on. So obviously there's a big difference between the parties over what they want to do around oil and gas. Rishi Sunak today up in Aberdeenshire talking about the fact that they're expecting more than 100 new oil and gas licences to be approved in the autumn, whereas Labour has said that they want to ban if they were in power, that they would not grant new licences for oil and gas drilling. So that's kind of a key dividing line there that the Metro's really drawn out on this story.
Well, indeed, this is divisive, isn't it? The Guardian, dismay as the Prime Minister vows to max out UK fossil fuel reserves, Lucy. Certainly in the Times yesterday, he talked about the need to be pragmatic and proportionate without burdening people with additional costs. But Sir David King, former Chief Scientific Officer for the UK, talked today about how the climate crisis is the greatest threat to our civilization ever. So where's the urgency? Does Rishi Sunak really not actually care about climate change?
Well, look, he maintains that he does want the UK to hit its objective of achieving net zero carbon emissions by 2050. Of course, the lucky thing for him is that's still a target very far away. So he can say that he wants to abide by that goal while rowing back on some of the policies. And we heard over the weekend him talking about launching a review into low traffic neighbourhoods and being on the side of the motorist. Today in Aberdeenshire, talking about 100 new licences for North Sea oil and gas exploration, again, is a very consumer-friendly policy in an era where we've all seen our electricity and energy bills rocket in recent years. So I think Rishi Sunak has been able to sort of make the argument to some degree that we've seen from Russia's invasion of Ukraine and how that has precipitated these steep increases in the wholesale price of gas, that the UK needs to be more energy independent. He also points out that even achieving net zero by 2050, the UK still plans to have a quarter of its energy coming from North Sea, from oil and gas, so that might as well be from the North Sea. However, as you point out, he's coming under a lot of flack from scientists, from NGOs, the likes of Oxfam and Friends of the Earth, and also, significant voices in his own party. The former net zero czar on his own backbenches, Chris Skidmore, has been quick to criticise the latest shift against the green agenda in the party. I think there are also concerns from the likes of Alok Sharma, the former COP president, and Zach Goldsmith, the Tory peer. So it's certainly not cut and dry, this policy, that it's got sort of wholesale Tory support. And I think that, this is an issue where there's going to be more tension as we get closer to the election.
Yes, you talk about energy independence, power up Britain from Britain was the phrase we heard today. And yet people pointing out we ship out, export 80% of North Sea oil and gas. It's private companies that make the profit, apart from the exchequer, I presume, getting taxes. We then re-import from elsewhere. So don't quite see how powering up Britain from Britain actually, rings true for many people. Your paper, the Daily Mirror, says the PM has caved into demands from hard-right Tories and big business. But does this put a wedge with both Labour and indeed the SNP, who are very fearful of upsetting Scottish voters and the tens of thousands of jobs that rely on the North Sea oil and gas industry, Lizzy?
Yeah, it's undeniable that, the oil and gas sector is a huge employer in Scotland. And indeed, the Prime Minister was asked when he was up there today whether this was just a sort of canny political ploy to try and get some votes in the northeast of Scotland. He denied that and said it was, the best decision for the country. But there will be, you could certainly look at it from that sense that is a key vote winner that for the Conservatives, that they want to ensure that they're protecting jobs and that sort of thing. Obviously, for Labour, they would be arguing that they want to transition away from oil and gas, but by creating jobs in other spheres. And one of the points that we make in the Mirror today is that the Prime Minister has said that he's going to be putting all this money into fossil fuels, but where is the commitment towards renewable energy? Ensuring that the UK is not reliant on Russian oil and gas is important. Everybody would agree with that. But something like 4% of Britain's gas comes from Russia. So actually, a lot of 20% of North Sea oil is for use in the UK. There's a lot of this is actually perhaps not as the Prime Minister has billed it. And actually, there was an interesting thing today where an old tweet from Greg Hands, who is now the Tory chairman but was energy minister, from last year was saying that, this wouldn't necessarily, more gas exploration wouldn't necessarily reduce household bills. So while Rishi Sunak is pitching this as a cost of living issue, I don't think these licenses are not going to mean that people's household bills go down overnight or even in the foreseeable future.
Well, indeed, years and years it takes, doesn't it, to get these, online. And just very quickly, last thought on this, Lucy. The commitment to green policy, he would say, is the 20 billion for these 2 carbon capture and storage projects. You might say proven-ish as schemes go, but also, a long time in delivery again. Where's the urgency, some might argue, for Rishi Sunak and his policies?
Well, yes, look, there has been that criticism that the announcement today of the 2 winners of the Track 2 process of the government's carbon capture and usage scheme is just an attempt to put a green gloss on the oil and gas exploration licenses. However, I think, look, there is interest in this technology. I think we have to sort of see what happens with that. But I think that there is, the government has also faced a lot of criticism for not going far enough on carbon capture to date.
Daily Express, should we move on? Lizzie, this is the Daily Express knowing its audience, if you like. Banks being warned that you can't rip off savers anymore. The suggestion if you have savings, you're basically losing money because inflation is outstripping what you're getting, which is nowhere near, obviously, what we're seeing in other interest rates. What pressure can be borne, do you think, on the banks? What's the paper saying?
Well, so the Express is looking at some comments from the UK's financial watchdog, the Financial Conduct Authority, which is basically saying that banks are not passing on interest rate rises to savers. And obviously, interest rate rises are hitting people hard through things like their mortgages, but savings accounts are not sort of seeing the benefit of that. So under new rules, which I think come into force today, banks are going to be forced to sort of show that they're offering their customers value for money. And this is kind of crucial as obviously we're sort of staring down the barrel of potentially another interest rate rise on Thursday when the Bank of England's Monetary Policy Committee sort of does its latest announcement. And so if there's no kind of carrot for savers, then it's bad news all round. So I think this is the government's attempt to try and say, they've asked people to endure the pain of trying to get inflation down with these interest rate rises. And so this is sort of an attempt to say, if we can get people saving, we can show the benefits there, then that will only contribute to sort of this wider effort to try and stabilise the economy.
And The Guardian, Lucy, school strikes called off after pay offer accepted, 6.5% pay offer. All eyes presumably on those sectors of the NHS that are still striking now, which is a real headache for one of Rishi Sunak's targets for the year.
Yes, look, that's right. The teachers in England today have accepted a 6.5% salary increase for 2023-24. An increase of 6% has been offered to doctors, but as you say, junior doctors are still pressing ahead with industrial action. I think this is nonetheless a big moment for Sunak and, of course, for Gillian Keegan, the Education Secretary. We've seen waves of disruption to school pupils this year, particularly in February, when we had those concerted 8 days of action that spanned teachers, but also nurses and train drivers. There really was a sense earlier this year that, key parts of the country were not working due to industrial action. So I'm sure there will be a relief all around in Downing Street. But I think it's also worth pointing out that on average, this 6.5% increased offer is 2 percentage points more than the offer put to most teachers originally by the government. So in a sense, it also does prove that strikes do work in improving the negotiating power, the leverage of trade unions, and the eventual offer on salary given to workers.
Well, and I suppose that will feed into the radiographers, junior doctors, consultants who've had recent strike action and possibly plan more. And I'm seeing that the suggestion now is from the National Health Service that more than 835,000 appointments have now had to be rescheduled due to strike action across hospital, ambulance, mental health and community services since December. And that, they suggest, is likely to be an underestimate because not all trusts are able to supply their data. And that's a huge number of people now waiting for care, Lizzie.
Yeah, I mean, it's an absolutely huge number of people missing routine appointments on top of the COVID backlog, and a real headache for Rishi Sunak, as you said, of his commitment to get NHS waiting times down. Obviously, the unions taking industrial action have always argued that people were waiting for long periods to get treatment anyway because staffing levels are so poor, that staff are burnt out, that there's sickness, that they haven't been able to recruit people. One of the big arguments the Junior Doctors Union, the BMA, has been making is that, they can't keep staff, that people, they're training up junior doctors who are then going to Australia where the pay is better and that they can have a better quality of life. So as Lucy said, there is an argument to say that industrial action does work and that raising some of these concerns can get the government, really hold the government's feet to the fire over it. Obviously, people taking industrial action, people working in the health service, I don't think any of them would want people's care to be disrupted. But, people I've spoken to, doctors, nurses, all that sort of thing in our reporting around all of this industrial action say none of them want to be doing this. They're trying to, find a way to, mean that to make sure that they're able to afford to live and that their jobs are manageable, but also to ensure that the health service can continue to operate in a way that, serves everybody within it. And if you've got no staff and you're like nobody wants to work there, then that's not going to work for the foreseeable future.